Hi, Carlos here. Welcome back to the Weekly Word Online. And I just want to share a little bit of what I touched on in my last devotional. I mentioned Zephaniah 3:17 and about how we are to practice God's presence. And there's a time when we dance before the Lord. There's a time when we rejoice because the Lord rejoices over us. And I touched on that from Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17. And I want to also look at that verse again, but kind of look a little bit more at the singing part, because singing says so much. And let me share about that. I did this as a kid, and I still do now, right? When I was really happy about something, when I knew something good was happening, it didn't matter what I did. It was homework, or if it was the mundane chores at home, or if it's shoveling, or whatever the case may be. If I knew something good was coming on the horizon, if I knew that everything, that all my assignments were done at school, or I was going to a friend's house, or I'm having a getaway with my wife for the weekend, or we're going to have a week off, or Christmas is coming, or March break, whatever the case may be, I tend to sing and hum a lot more than I usually do. And that's something, right? I think that when we're going through a good period in our lives, we sing and we kind of hum a little ditty or whatever the case may be to kind of like, it's kind of like we're letting our joy and our emotion out. You know, God made us with our emotions. God made us to be joyful. And I think a lot of times, by the way, we think that being joyful means we're always smiling all the time. But joyful really isn't happiness. The wonderful thing about the fruit of the Spirit being joy is that it's not about the smiling so much as that we're smiling on the inside, that no matter what's happening, you know, we have that trust. We have joy in God. Why? And we can sing. Why? Because we trust in Him no matter what the situation is. I know people who are grieving the losses of their children. I know people who are grieving the loss of relationships. I know people who have lost jobs and are looking for their track again in life. I know this. And sometimes it would seem like I said in the other devotional, like, you know, there's times where we just don't want to dance, or we don't feel like dancing, and the arts are so important to God. Look how He created this earth, and God is a wonderful artist, and He loves the arts. And I think with the dancing, I'd like to comment on the singing. In the scripture there, it says that God rejoices in us, and not only with the dance, but He's singing. You remember when you held your children in your arms? And you sang to them because you loved them. And I think it's an amazing thing to see that that God sings over us. You know that God sees us through the lens of the cross. I remember having those little Cracker Jack things with the red on it. I don't know if you remember that. And there was like this paper with squiggly purple, red, and blue markings. It looked like a mess. But once you put that red cellophane on top of that and superimpose that, you saw a message, and you saw clearly through all that mess. And that's what Jesus' blood does for us. That when God sees us through His Son's blood, through the lens of the cross, He doesn't see that mess anymore. He sees someone who is worth singing over. And I want to challenge you today that maybe you don't feel like singing, but I think it's something that if we're to follow God and follow in His steps, I think maybe we should practice His presence, not only by dancing in His presence, but singing in His presence. You and I have a song to sing. And when we have our hearts surrendered to God, the most important thing we can do is be completely surrendered to Him. And when that happens, then we have that chance and that choice to sing that song. I know it's not easy for us to sing. You know, and situations in life really might almost render us silent. But I want to encourage you as children of God, and maybe somebody who's out there who's seeking, there's a song to sing. I'm often reminded, as I've read in history books, and probably many of you know, that our brothers and sisters who were captured in slavery in that horrible, horrific time, and still there's slavery to this day. But one of the things that our beloved friends did was they sang in the fields. They sang when they probably didn't have any business singing. They must have understood that God sang over them and danced over them, and they sang even in the midst of their trials. I'll remind you that Paul and Silas sang and praised the Lord in the middle of that dark, dingy cell, and the Lord broke them out of it. If you want those shackles off your feet, like the song says, we not only have to dance, but we need to raise our voice and sing. Practice His presence. God bless you.